Welcome to Food Friends, a podcast inspiring home cooks to try new dishes in the kitchen by sharing trusted recipes, tips, and friendship. Hi, I'm Sonia.
And I'm Carrie. We met in Los Angeles over 15 years ago as personal chefs and haven't stopped talking about food since. We're so glad you're here. Thanks for being our food friend.
If you enjoyed our podcast, please subscribe, leave us a review, and share this episode with friends. We love hearing from you, so follow us on Instagram or drop us a line at foodfriendspodcast.com.
Yes, we'd love to hear from you and your food friends. Happy cooking and eating.
Hi, Carrie.
Hi, Sonia.
It's the most magical time of year. Question mark?
I think it's pretty magical. It's the time of year when there's so much great food and hosting and parties and dinners and rich, delicious, traditional foods.
Yeah, look, I think it's important to have reasons to celebrate, even when it feels really challenging in the world, or maybe you've had a challenging year. I love that this time of year, there are so many beautiful traditions and food traditions that really do bring joy into these colder months. And I think having menus and plans moving forward just make it so much easier to host. And if you're not hosting, even give you ideas of what to bring to your friend's house. We're going to cover some Hanukkah ideas, some Christmas ideas, some just general holiday season hosting ideas. So I have to start with Hanukkah because it comes up first. It starts Sunday, December 14th, Sunday night. I love that it starts on a Sunday night because you can actually host a first night of Hanukkah party. Hanukkah changes every year, so sometimes it starts on a Tuesday, sometimes it starts on a Wednesday. So having a weekend night is really fun. I have a really kind of go-to approach for my Hanukkah parties, and I think a lot of people I know have a similar approach, which is, of course, you have to have latkes, and we'll get into that in a second. But having a spread of oil-rich foods is the tradition. So a lot of people do that in the form of different kinds of fritters, or even fried chicken is something I've done in the past, as you know. But I don't like to reinvent the wheel. I really like to cherish the traditional latke spirit. And you and I both make latkes ahead of time and have shared our strategies for making latkes for a crowd. And last year, Adina Sussman published a recipe that went super viral for a new technique for latkes, which she called a sheet pan latke board.
Oh,
have
wow.
you seen this?
No, I haven't seen this. I'm so curious. By the way, is it like the answer to my prayers of not frying?
Yes, it's a way to create a latke without having to fry and have your whole house smell of fried oil for a week. And I think it's a little bit of a different textural component and just a little bit different of a presentation component, both of which are fun. So latkes, you typically make little patties of shredded potato and you put them in a pan and you fry them. Here, you take a big sheet pan, you stick it in the oven with some oil. You get that oil ripping hot. While your oil's heating, you mix up your grated potatoes with egg and onion and salt and pepper like you would make any latke. And then you throw that into the oil. And then you, of course, bake it so that it becomes like a full sheet pan, almost like a sheet pan hash brown.
Yeah, that's what a latke essentially is. This is why I love it so much.
Definitely a latke is in the hash brown category. But I like this because it reminds me of cast iron skillet potato kugel, where you do the same kind of idea, or cornbread, which you and I have talked about, where you heat the oil so you get that crust.
Yes.
That is the idea here. But then I love the way she suggests with the presentation to top your sheet pan latke with all these different fun toppings, colorful toppings, herbs. You can, of course, do the regular things like applesauce and sour cream, but you could also do little pickled red onion or dill and parsley salad. You could have it be really fun and cut it into squares. And you've not been frying. It's probably a little bit lighter, a little less decadent, but still festive and fun.
I really love this idea. And I think what it sounds like is it also encourages a lot of sharing. It's like a very family style way of serving latkes. As someone who's catered many Hanukkahs before I had clients, I used to help them cater their Hanukkah party every year. What we found is that when people see you frying latkes in the kitchen, it's like this invitation to be right next to you while there's like oil popping everywhere. And it was a slightly dangerous and also really hard to make latkes for 50 people when people were really hungry for them. So this idea that you could make a sheet pan and kind of set it out is such a cool idea.
It also makes you think of brunch, like if you did a sheet pan latke for
Yes.
brunch and you cracked eggs into it at the end and put that back in the oven. Wouldn't that be a great way to do a
Yes.
buffet
Yeah.
brunch kind of
Or you could
idea?
put poached eggs on it or eggs on the side. It's kind of genius.
Another thing I've been loving for Hanukkah parties in general is soka pancakes. Do you know what soka
I
is?
don't know. I feel like I've heard this, but will you please help me remember?
Sure, yeah. So a soka pancake is a chickpea flour pancake.
Right.
And I discovered this dish in my 20s when I worked at a restaurant in LA called the Little Door. Do you know the Little
Yeah, it
Door?
was right down the street from my house. I love
Yeah.
that.
So I worked there and they have a very French menu, but they also have a North African menu. And you take chickpea flour and water. It's a simple batter. And chickpea flour is something you can actually find pretty easily. Bob's Red Mill has one, and it's vegan. And it has protein. David Leibovitz has a really good recipe. You make the batter, you have to let it sit for a couple hours. That's the only, I don't think that's tricky, but that's just something you have to do. And then it's a technique of getting your pan really hot, pouring the batter in, and then you pop it under the broiler and it firms up. You take the whole pan and you put it under the broiler. There's other ways to make chickpea pancakes, but I do really like David Leibovitz's
So,
method.
do you do this in a skillet, in a stainless steel skillet, or do you do this in your cast iron? Like, what do you cook this in?
Anything that is oven safe.
Okay.
And then it's the same idea of a latke, which is you can add all kinds of toppings to it. It is thinner and firmer. It's not a latke texture, but you take a batter and you're cooking it in oil. So you're still celebrating the miracle of oil, which is part of Hanukkah, but it's a little bit of a different flavor and texture. And I want that contrast at Hanukkah. I don't want latkes 7 nights a week. It's fun to have a little variety. The thing that the Little Door, I believe, serve this with, and this is what I like to serve it with, is romesco sauce,
Oh,
which
interesting.
is a pepper and
Yes.
almondy and just a delicious sauce. And to me, it really goes well with the chickpeas. And it's another alternative to the sour cream applesauce traditional sides that go with fritters at Hanukkah.
Yeah, I really like this idea because it has sort of the same vibes as this sheet pan, which is that you're making this communal pancake. You're not making them individual. And I think that's what can be really hard for a home cook, especially if you're hosting a lot of people. It's really hard to churn out individual latkes, and it would be really hard to churn out little individual canapes.
You cut it into triangles. So you do cut it
Okay.
up into individual serving sizes.
But people help
And you put
themselves.
And some people do keep them as little pancakes. It's really like any dish, there's a huge variety of preparations. At a Hanukkah party, you also want something really vibrant and fresh and acidic because of all the richness of the oil dishes. And this is definitely not a new salad, but around the holiday season, we had a really close family friend that always made a grapefruit and avocado
I
salad.
love
It was
that.
just the
I
tradition.
love that.
And there's something about a hostess who or host who just has their kind of go-to dish in the season and you kind of want them to serve it. And that's what I associate holiday time and Hanukkah with for some reason is grapefruit avocado salad. And I found this one recipe though for you could do just grapefruit and avocado and salt, pepper, olive oil, call it a day, and that's a beautiful salad. But I found one that has also has spinach and they have a sesame vinaigrette.
You mean
And there
like
was some
you mean like toasted sesame?
Yes,
Really?
toasted sesame vinaigrette. And I thought, oh, yeah, that makes sense because citrus and toasted sesame are such good flavors
Yes, you're
together.
right.
And again, to enhance the complexity on a table where there might be latkes, which are really rich and starchy, the acidity and brightness of grapefruit, the richness of avocado, but then this punchy, nutty dressing. It kind of made sense. I'm really curious to try it. And then for dessert, because you definitely need dessert, some kind of donut is a really typical Hanukkah dessert. And there's one that I've been making that is really popular in Ukraine and across the former Soviet Union. It's called ponchiki. And they're little donuts that are made from farmer's cheese, which is kind of like a dry cottage cheese.
Yeah.
And
Is it
I
mixed with
like
a little bit of flour or is it just the cottage cheese and a little bit of egg or something? What's in the mix?
There's flour and there's egg.
Oh,
So when you make traditional Hanukkah donuts, which are called sufganiyot, it's a yeasted dough. You have to let that dough rise. You have to knead it
it's
forever.
sensitive.
It's
Yes.
sensitive. You
Yeah.
have to fry it just the right way. What I like about these is there's no rising time, but you still have the fun experience of a donut. So you can just make the batter and deep fry the little balls of dough and then dust them with powdered sugar. I like to do some kind of fruity dipping sauce, some kind of
Raspberry
compote.
or
Yes.
compote or yeah,
Comp or raspberry or cherry is really nice if you want to keep it
I
Slavic.
love that.
Something that is acidic. And then the other I'm thinking about for Hanukkah festivities is with all the fried food, sometimes I'm looking for olive oil or oil celebratory dishes that aren't fried. And I love drizzling ice cream with olive oil. And I saw this recipe years ago with ice cream and they did olive oil and warm dates. And I thought, oh, that's such a really classy dessert for hosting where you don't have to do very much. If you buy some good ice cream, then that presentation of serving up scoops with just warm dates and a drizzle of olive oil, it feels so
So
fancy, but
fancy.
required
Yeah.
almost no work.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
also ice cream, olive oil dates goes really beautiful with those little donuts too. That sounds delicious.
So, Carrie, what is your first menu?
Well, Sonia, this might be kind of surprising to you, but as you know, I've catered Hanukkah for many, many years. I started catering for this client, this family, when I was in my 20s, and I catered their Hanukkah for 15 years. And I have noticed over the years that Hanukkah moves around based on the calendar. But I do find that most years when I would cater Hanukkah, it would come before Christmas. And so my holidays would start with Hanukkah and latkes, and then it would end with Christmas and a lot of other client parties, and then my own family holidays. I often find that when the holidays roll around, I'm really craving latkes first, and then I want to do my own Christmas holidays. And my brother-in-law, his wife is Jewish. She immigrated here to Los Angeles, and her whole family lives here too. My house is a house that can host Hanukkah, and so I'm actually hosting a small Hanukkah party this year with just our family.
It always really moves me that you celebrate Hanukkahs because you've told me this in the past. Like, I'm hosting Hanukkah. And I'm like, why is Carrie hosting Hanukkah? And I don't think I realized the full context. I thought it was just because you loved it, because you used to cater it. I'd always known that part of the story. I didn't realize you're actually hosting family.
Yes.
It makes so much sense. And it's such an important reminder. So many people have different kinds of members of their family, and there's a way to kind of honor everyone's traditions. And it just makes me so happy that you're hosting.
Well, and what's special about this side of my family, I've spoken about them many times before. They're all really, really good cooks, but they all have really big jobs. My sister-in-law has a big job. She works in advertising. Her sister works in marketing. And then her parents run a small family business and they work 6 days a week. When they host, they do it so well. One of the first things that you said was the joy of Hanukkah being on a Sunday is it gives you a weekend day. And so I was like, oh, Hanukkah's on a Sunday. If I host, they'll bring dishes. And I have done these big Hanukkahs with like 30, 40, 50 people. And there's something so beautiful about all that oil and chaos. For our family, we really could use a quieter Hanukkah this year. And so I'm thinking about making it small, just the 10 of us, and having it be seated because if I can put everyone at the table, then I can also talk to them. I'm going to be making my latkes ahead of time and reheating them. My husband, James, he also learned how to make latkes, so we can make them together. And then what else I'm going to have on my menu? So I feel like the two best parts of Hanukkah are the fried latkes and dessert. And that was really how this family that I catered for, they had so many desserts. There was always gelt and someone always brought dozens of donuts. What I'm thinking about is what in the middle can kind of sustain people. I'm going to do some roasted chicken drumsticks, very simple, olive oil, salt, pantry spices, garlic, onion, a little bit of paprika, just so people have a little bit of protein. And then a really flavorful, herby, spicy salad, arugula, mizuna. It's an Alison Roman salad where you just put cilantro, dill, parsley, all these herbs together. You squeeze some lemon over it, a little bit of really good olive oil. And for dessert, I'm going to be bringing you to our table. Years ago when we were catering, you showed me how to make these chocolate dipped fresh oranges, the Cara oranges. And our Cara tree, which has been very slow since we planted it, is now full of oranges. And so I think
Wow.
our harvest is going to be kind of line up right with the dates. I'm going to have Mac dip the fruit. He loves the chocolate. I'm sure he'll be sampling as he goes. And I'm going to make a boozy pear snacking cake that I made for my birthday. I'm going to repeat that recipe again.
Where is that recipe from?
That was a recipe I shared a few episodes ago. It was a snacking cake that had apples and rum in it. And
Oh, this is the banana cake that you
yes,
turn. This is the apple cake that you turn into a
banana
banana
cake.
cake. And now you've turned into a pear
I've
cake.
turned
I
into a
love
pear
it.
cake. It was so delicious. It's a great way to use seasonal pears, especially if they've gotten a little bit extra soft. And I love the amaretto, and it's covered with the turbinado, that crunchy sugar on top. My friend Maylin found this really great bakery in the valley that has the best black and white cookies in town.
No
And
way.
yeah,
What's its name?
it's
What's it
called
called?
Bee's Bakery, and
Wow.
she brought them to our Hanukkah party last year. As a New Yorker, she really loves a black and white cookie. It was the sleeper hit of the night. And then I know that someone will bring donuts, someone will bring gelt. There will be plenty of desserts. Bookending the meal with really great latkes that I'm going to make ahead, and then a lot of desserts, and having a little bit of salad and chicken in the middle is a great way to go.
I actually feel really similar to you. That's kind of my strategy too, for the most part. You need good salads, and usually I'll have more than one. You're just so right that it's about the halakas, it's about the dessert, and everything else is kind of extra. And I'm really touched that you'll make the oranges. That's definitely a wintertime staple for me too. So, I didn't grow up celebrating Christmas at all. But when we moved back to Oregon from California 7 years ago, we started going every single Christmas to visit our friends. They live a little bit south of here, and I've known them since the day I was born. One of them was Catholic and the other is Jewish. And so we would often celebrate kind of all the winter holidays together, but we'd always go down at Christmas. And so I started having Christmas Eve dinner and Christmas dinner as an adult. And I've come to really, really value the holiday in a different way than I ever thought I could. And unfortunately, like very sadly, Nancy, who was the host, passed away this year in September, which has been just really, really hard and sad. And it's become kind of hard to think about the holidays. And I know that's true for a lot of people who've lost someone. The holidays can be a tougher time of year. So I've been thinking, how can I honor Nancy this holiday season, whether it's on Christmas or some other time, because it is such a great time of year to be hosting. And Nancy loved classic British and Irish food.
So
She
funny.
loved she loved lots of things. She's from the Pacific Northwest. She grew up on Puget Sound, so she's a true Northwesterner through and through. But she had this affinity for that kind of food, and so I actually love the stories of food and literature. And there's always these English roasts, and also if you watch like Nigella
Yeah.
or Jamie
I'm
Oliver,
so
they're always
fascinated. I've
making,
never made any of
right?
that. Wait, are
So
you
her
about to tell us that this is what you're making for the for Christmas?
Yes, I would like to embrace a classic British Sunday roast, which maybe also overlaps with British Christmas, but I just know this is typically a Sunday roast. So I'm thinking about Yorkshire pudding, which are popovers. There are Yorkshire tins, but I found a recipe for making it in muffin tins because I don't want to buy extra equipment. But I love the idea of a buttery, crispy
Have
popover.
you ever made Yorkshire pudding before?
I
Oh, you
have,
have.
like, but
Wow.
it's been a
Okay.
minute. It's been a minute. It's not that hard, but it's a little intimidating at first.
Yeah.
But it's the same idea of you get something really hot, you pour batter in, and then it puffs up in the oven.
How
And it's just
exciting.
such, yeah, it's so
Yeah.
exciting. Then I'm thinking of lamb chops. I feel like lamb chops are a very British thing, or often it's like a roast or prime rib or something like that. But I love the idea of something simple like a lamb chop that you can kind of sear on both sides. And if lamb is hard to source, I think another thing that goes really well with this kind of meal is just sausages. Really good cooked sausages if you want
Yeah.
something more affordable. And then cauliflower cheese. Do you know what cauliflower
I
cheese
don't,
is?
please tell me. I don't know what you might have mentioned this to me before, but
I think I did
please tell
once.
all of us.
We've talked about it once before, but it's almost like the idea of mac and cheese, but you make it with cauliflower, which I kind of love the balance of something really rich with something really healthy, like a vegetable.
Yeah.
But this is not health food. Don't get it wrong. You're making a bechamel and then you're adding in a ton of different cheeses like cheddar and Gruyere, and you're letting it get all bubbly and cooked. It's a casserole. It's
Is the cauliflower in bite-sized pieces, or is it more riced?
It's
Okay.
typically done in small bite-sized pieces, but maybe some people do it
It's
rice, but
almost
it's
like a
really meant to
gratin.
be. It's like a
Yeah.
gratin. It's absolutely a gratin
Okay.
with cauliflower. Yeah, same idea. In fact, a lot of people add a little nutmeg, just like you would in potato au gratin, right?
How
And
wonderful.
then the other thing I'm really excited to make around the holidays, and maybe even during Hanukkah too, is British roast potatoes. And unlike other kinds of, like, it's not potato wedges, it's not smashed potatoes, it's not roasted potatoes. I do think even though Brits get a bad rap for their potatoes, I think their Sunday roast style potatoes are maybe the elite form of potatoes. What you do is you par cook them like you would for smashed potatoes, then you shake them around in a pot so that they get all these kind of crackly edges where oil can soak in. And then, yet again, you're using the technique where you get your oil really hot in a baking pan, and then you add the potatoes to that already hot oil, and then you roast them for a lot longer. So you're roasting them till they're so burnished, so
And
crispy, but
crispy.
inside they're fluffy like a baked potato. To me, this is like heaven.
I mean, what's funny about what you're sharing is my friend Lisa Davis, who is also British and who's visited us many times in Los Angeles, wrote out this recipe for me 3 years ago, and I've never made them because there's so many steps, and I'm
There's
always
a lot of
kind of like,
steps.
am I going to make these potatoes at home? It almost feels like making a French fry at home, which feels like something I could just get when I'm out. I love that you're doing this. It's really not that dissimilar to me, a non Jewish person celebrating Hanukkah. Because of our friends, because of our family, our chosen family, we have made these new traditions. It kind of gives you permission to make these really rich, exciting foods.
Yeah, and Nancy loved potatoes in all forms. That's something she and I shared, and I know she would have loved this style of potato. You have to have vegetables on the table. I'm thinking of some kind of pea dish because that's so
I
British.
mean, you've
There's a
got
great
cauliflower on the table.
You need something great. Jamie Oliver has a great peas and beans with chili and mint that looks
Oh,
exquisite to me.
delicious.
And Oda Lengi has a great roasted carrot with harissa and pomegranate seeds that also feels very holiday inspired. You don't have to make this all in one night. I'm thinking about holiday meals and sides that can work throughout the season. And then, of course, dessert. So, aside from trifle, to me, one of the most classic British desserts is sticky toffee pudding. And years ago, my British friend introduced me to Nigella Lawson's sticky toffee pudding. And she was like, Nigella has the easiest version of it because there are some recipes that take a few steps. Pudding in England is not what we think of as pudding. And this is a cake you make with dates, hydrated, softened dates. So it's very caramelly in flavor. And then usually you're pouring a little bit of cream on top at the end, and it's meant to be served warm. So it's like a caramelly, gooey date cake. So it is traditional to have a little pitcher of cream to serve it with, which would be cold. It wouldn't be room temp. But it's not traditionally served with ice cream, although you could, and I'm sure many people do. But the idea of the cake itself is that you serve it
Warm.
warm. It's sticky toffee pudding. It sounds like what it is ultimately.
I really love that. It does feel like you would need to break up this menu over the course of a few days, kind of prep things. Or you could just spend the whole day in the kitchen. I mean, that's also something really nice about a meal like this. Everyone's kind of revolving around that space. So it's really more about just spending time together.
Yeah, and again, like I said, you could break this up over different meals, but cauliflower cheese you could make ahead. You could make peas and beans ahead. You could make your carrots ahead. For me, this time of year, the world shuts down and I'm in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to do. And I know that's not for everyone, but that is how I'm thinking about this particular meal and honoring her.
I really love that. Well, Sonia, I also want to share my Christmas menu. We have some similarities in how we are thinking about these meals. I was also thinking about rich red meat. So my menu is short ribs. I typically like to make my short ribs with red wine, but I found this really interesting recipe that's for vermouth braised short ribs. It has a lot of shallot, garlic, leeks, celery in it, and then dry vermouth and white wine, thyme, parsley, rosemary. Once I decided I would do the short ribs, I thought I want to do a classic meat and three. So this really rich meat and then three different vegetable sides. I feel like a red meat deserves a potato. And I found this really interesting. It's called potato pave. Have you heard of this?
Yeah, I love potato
Have you
pave.
made potato pave?
I have never made it myself, but I have eaten it and I
Okay.
love it. It's kind of intense to
It's a
make,
little
no?
intense to make. It's basically a little square of potatoes, but they're layered. You slice your potatoes really thin. You actually bake them in a loaf pan. So they're in this rectangular shape. And once they've baked, you put weights on top of that that to really push them down and have these tiny little layers of potato. And then you refrigerate that. And then when it's cold, you cut it into squares, and then you add some Parmesan and you fry it in a pan.
By the way, it's kind of a really fancy latke if you think about it. If someone really wanted to go chefy on their latkes, this would be a cool version.
Yeah, I mean, you cook the potatoes in a cream sauce, so it's also potatoes and cream. So my full menu is the braised short ribs, these pave potatoes, this easy roasted carrots and crispy kale dish, and I also want to serve it with your garlic pampushki, which are basically these pillowy, soft garlic bread rolls that you make in a pan and bring to the table. I'm really thinking about, you've sort of got this long cooked meat, crispy potatoes. I love that the carrots and the crispy kale are orange and green, so that'll be really beautiful. And then you bring these pillowy rolls to the table. The way that you sort of describe them on your website of how they're traditionally served with borscht, the garlic is kind of a counterbalance to the sweet borscht. And I think you kind of need something that's sharp against that really rich, heavy meat. And I think you also need something to soak up all those sauces. What's great about all of these is I'm going to make the short ribs a whole week in advance. And I'm also a few days in advance going to make the potatoes.
Because you can roast those off and chill them and then just fry them
And
the
just
day
fry
of.
them right before you're getting ready to serve them. As the meat is reheating in the oven, I can make the pampushki in the morning and let that dough rise over the course of the day, bake it when it's ready, and then reheat it and put the garlic oily mixture on top of it. For dessert, I'm going to serve profiteroles with ice cream and chocolate sauce.
How fun.
And I know I've shared this with you before, but profiteroles were one of the first. Profiteroles are cream puffs.
Are you going to make them from scratch?
I'm going to make them from scratch. And
oh, you are?
they're surprisingly so easy. It's something that you can make the day ahead and put it in a container on your counter. And the next day, what I like to do is just crisp them up a little bit and let them cool, cut them in half, and fill them with really good ice cream and a little drizzle of warm chocolate sauce. This is almost like a steakhouse menu.
Yeah, I love in a way how focused it is as a menu. Everything goes together perfectly. I can be a little maximalist with my menu planning. I think that's partly my grandmother's upbringing. She always had like 4 courses and a million dishes. That's what I like actually about yours is that it's the opposite. It's very doable, very easy to plan ahead.
Well, and I think in a different approach to your holiday that you're doing with your friends who are family, our Christmas is very dominated by our child and packages and presents, and we open up a game, we play it. And so being able to make most of this days in advance and kind of take it out and reheat it and still have a really nice formal meal is really great.
Carrie, this is really getting me in the holiday spirit, honestly. And I love hearing your ideas. It's actually making me think about making some changes to some of my menus, to be honest.
Well, I think it's really helpful to talk these things out. This is really where our friendship started, was we would call each other and share menus. I had some movement in my menu when I was thinking about it. And I was like, I just want to call Sonia and ask her, what colors can I put on my plate that will help this brown meat and white potatoes? So I think this is how we can help each other. I do think it's helping me get excited too about the holidays.
And however you celebrate this season, we both wish you a delicious time of year and may it be joyful and peaceful and nourishing. And thank you so much for being here and listening.
Yeah, and we really hope your holidays are very delicious.
Till next time.
Till next time. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for being our food friend.
If you enjoyed our podcast, please subscribe, leave us a review, and share this episode with friends. We love hearing from you, so follow us on Instagram or drop us a line at foodfriendspodcast.com.
Yes, we'd love to hear from you and your food friends. Happy cooking and eating.